Grab the banana peel sitting on your kitchen counter right now, the one you were about to toss in the trash, because what I'm about to tell you will change the way you look at your cucumber vines forever, starting this week. Your cucumbers are pale. They're dropping flowers before anything sets, and you've probably already spent $35 this season on bloom boosters and potassium fertilizers trying to fix it. Meanwhile, the fix has been sitting in your kitchen every single morning, and you've been throwing it away. In the next few minutes, I'll show you the one mistake 9 out of 10 gardeners make once flowers appear. But first, let's count what this misunderstanding has already cost you. You are not to blame for any of this. The knowledge that banana peels are a serious, legitimate source of potassium for flowering vegetables simply never became popular, because nobody profits from telling you to save your kitchen scraps. This isn't a conspiracy. It's just the way information travels. If there's money in a product, somebody puts it on a shelf with a label, and the label gets read. If there's no money in it, the knowledge quietly stays in the background. Your grandmother probably knew something like this. Think about it. Did her cucumbers ever look more loaded than yours, even with less fussing? If they did, she probably had a habit she never thought to explain, because to her it was just ordinary sense. Here is what you'll learn today, and I'm going to be specific. You'll understand exactly why potassium is the one nutrient cucumbers beg for once flowers open. You'll get the precise preparation method with real proportions, and you'll receive a 4-step protocol you can start tomorrow morning. No Latin, no chemistry lecture, no condescension. Just the truth, the way a neighbor would tell it. Before we get to the protocol, though, there's a scene I need you to picture, because it shows exactly what happens when this window closes. Imagine it's late July, a warm Saturday, and you walk out to your cucumber bed expecting to see progress. The vines look fine, green, leafy, sprawling, but the flowers are dropping. Not a few, many. They open yellow and bright, and then fall off the vine before anything takes hold. And you stand there genuinely confused, because you watered, you fertilized, you did everything the bag said. By the time you figure out what went wrong, you've lost 3 to 4 weeks of the fruiting window, and the season in your region doesn't give you those weeks back. Stay with me to the end of this. That's exactly where the answer lives. Now let's do an honest accounting of what this misunderstanding costs, because the numbers will startle you. A bag of sulfate of potash at your local garden center runs between $6 and $10. And during the flowering and fruiting period, cucumbers need it once a week. So you're looking at 6 to 8 applications per season, which means $40 to $80 on potassium alone, not counting the bloom boosters. Bloom boosters, those colorful packages with words like flower fuel on the front, run $20 to $30 per container. And here's what almost nobody reads on the label. The primary active ingredients are potassium and phosphorus. You are paying $25 for a product whose core ingredient is potassium, dressed up in a package. Add it together. Potassium fertilizer, $40. Bloom booster, $25. And you've spent $65 in a single season on one nutrient. The banana peel path costs exactly $0, because Americans throw away roughly 30 to 40 pounds of banana peel per household every year, which is a full season's supply of potassium for a large garden bed. Does that number make you want to sit down for a moment? It should. And the hidden cost isn't just money. The synthetic potassium chloride in many commercial fertilizers has a high salt index, meaning it can suppress root activity and damage soil biology if applied even slightly too generously. Every season you rely on it, you're adding a subtle salt burden to your soil. And soil that's been receiving synthetic potassium annually for 10 or more years shows measurable changes in its pH and its microbial community. Banana peel, by contrast, feeds the soil organisms while it releases potassium, which means the soil gets better over time rather than slowly more dependent on the next bag. Here's the question worth sitting with. If the banana peel you throw away every morning contains the exact nutrient your cucumbers are begging for during flowering, why has nobody told you to use it? The answer to that question belongs to a story, and when you hear it, something will click. But before I tell you the story, let me show you the error that makes everything else fall apart. There is one mistake. 9 out of 10 gardeners make it, and most of them have no idea, because it looks completely correct from the outside. Picture a gardener in late June who has been doing everything right, watering regularly, keeping the soil loose, even getting some fertilizer down. The cucumber vines are spectacular, thick, dark green, vigorous. New growth is appearing every day, lush and heavy with promise. And then the flowers come. A few, then more. And then they drop. Not set, drop. By the first week of August, there are cucumbers on the vines, but far fewer than there should be. The gardener checks for pests, checks the moisture, assumes it was the weather, and never once connects the problem to the bag of all-purpose fertilizer they applied faithfully when the flowers opened. Stop feeding your cucumbers with all-purpose fertilizer once the flowers open. That all-purpose feed is primarily nitrogen, and nitrogen in a flowering cucumber does exactly one thing. It redirects the plant's energy toward more green, more vine, more leaf, and it quietly switches flower production off. Now let's go back to the story, because the history here matters more than you might think. In the mid-1940s, a British agronomist named Albert Howard was working at a composting institute in central India, a place called Indore, in what is now the state of Madhya Pradesh. Howard had spent decades watching Indian farmers work the land with almost no chemical inputs, and what struck him was not their poverty, it was their soil. He began systematically composting kitchen waste, agricultural residue, and fruit scraps, including banana peel, and documenting the results on test plots. His core finding? Organic waste returned to the soil consistently outperformed chemical-only approaches on long-duration plots, because organic amendments fed both the plant and the microorganisms the plant depended on. He published his findings in a book in 1940, a document that laid out the case for kitchen and garden waste as serious soil amendments, backed by years of field data from real farming communities. The agricultural chemistry establishment in Britain was not enthusiastic. Howard's composting system required no purchased inputs, which made it difficult to commercialize. His work was acknowledged politely and then mostly left on the shelf, while the post-war chemical fertilizer industry scaled rapidly, fueled by surplus nitrogen production from wartime manufacturing. The system that had no product to sell lost to the system that did, not because it worked worse, but because one had a sales force and the other did not. That is not a conspiracy. That is just commerce, and it happens every generation. What Howard did not know, because the research hadn't been done yet, was that banana peel specifically contains roughly 11.5% potassium by dry weight, making it genuinely comparable to many commercial organic potassium sources. He knew it worked. The mechanism was confirmed decades later. And here is the independent confirmation that makes Howard's story even more compelling. In the 1940s in the United States, a publisher named Jerome Irving Rodale founded a gardening magazine that became the primary voice for organic home gardening in America. Rodale had no connection to Howard's work in India. He was coming from a completely different tradition, working from American farms and American kitchens. And yet, he arrived at the same conclusion. Fruit scraps, including banana peel, belonged in the garden, not the trash. 2 people, 2 continents, 2 decades, 1 answer. That pattern deserves your attention. Give a like for Albert Howard. He spent decades proving something that nobody wanted to sell, and the cucumbers in your garden can prove him right this week. Now let's talk about what's actually happening inside your cucumber plant. Because once you understand the mechanism, the protocol makes complete sense, and you'll never forget it. Potassium is the unlock key. That's the best way to think about it. The plant produces sugars in its leaves through photosynthesis all day long, and those sugars need to travel from the leaves down into the developing flowers and fruits, which is where they become the cucumber you eventually pick. That movement of sugars through the plant is directly controlled by potassium. When potassium is adequate, the pathway stays open, sugars flow freely into flowers and developing fruit, and you get cucumbers that fill out properly, firm, heavy, well-shaped. When potassium is low, the pathway narrows, sugars stall in the leaves, flowers form but don't get the energy they need to set, and the ones that do set produce fruit that's narrow at the stem end, spotted or pale. Research in controlled cucumber cultivation showed that raising potassium from a low level to an adequate level nearly doubled the yield per plant. The difference was not marginal. It was transformational. What does this mean for you right now? It means that a pale, low-yielding cucumber vine is very likely not a watering problem or a variety problem. It's a potassium problem. And you have the solution sitting in your fruit bowl. The second mechanism is about timing in the plant's own cycle, and it connects directly to why leaves turn yellow in a specific pattern when potassium runs low. Potassium is mobile inside the plant. The plant can pull it out of older tissue and redirect it toward younger growth and developing fruit. So when the plant is potassium-starved during flowering, it begins cannibalizing its own older leaves, pulling potassium out of the bottom leaves and sending it upward. The bottom leaves yellow at the edges first, a thin line of yellow at the outer edge of each leaf, moving inward between the veins, while the central vein stays green the longest. By the time you see that pattern clearly on 3 or 4 bottom leaves, the plant has already been running short for weeks, and the fruiting window has been quietly narrowing the entire time. You couldn't have seen it earlier. The symptom arrives after the damage has already been building, which is exactly why correcting potassium before flowering, not after, is the only strategy that actually catches the window. There is one error that undoes everything else in this picture, and 9 out of 10 gardeners make it without ever realizing it. Here's what it looks like from the outside. The cucumber flowers have just opened. The gardener wants to support the plant during this critical moment, and they reach for the all-purpose fertilizer they've been using all season. It feels like the right move. The plant is working hard. It should be fed. The bag says it's complete nutrition. Logical, caring, and completely counterproductive. The reason is specific. Once flowers open, the optimal ratio between potassium and nitrogen shifts dramatically. Cucumbers in flower need potassium to exceed nitrogen by a ratio of 2:1 or 3:1. All-purpose fertilizers are balanced or nitrogen-forward. They push growth, not fruit. So the plant gets fed, the vines look magnificent, the dark green vigor is genuinely impressive, and the flowers drop. Within 10 to 14 days of applying that all-purpose fertilizer at flowering, you'll notice fewer cucumbers setting than expected, more flowers falling before they take hold, and a general sense that it just wasn't a productive season. The frustrating part is that the cause is invisible. The vine looks healthy. so you look everywhere else for the problem.
The fertilizer bag looked like help.
It was the quiet villain of the whole story. Write in the comments, did you make this switch at flowering time? Tell me your region. I want to see whether this pattern holds across different climates. Now here is the protocol, and it is simpler than you might expect after everything we've covered. First, gather 3 to 4 fresh banana peels. The riper the banana was, the more potassium is concentrated in the peel, so don't worry if they're quite brown. Second, place the peels in 1 liter of room temperature water, cover loosely with a cloth or a loose lid, and let them soak for 2 to 3 days in a spot that stays reasonably warm. Not in direct sun, but not cold either. Third, after 2 to 3 days, dilute the tea at a ratio of roughly 1 part peel water to 4 parts plain water before you apply it. This is critical because concentrated peel tea applied directly to roots causes potassium overdose, which burns root tips and blocks the plant's ability to absorb calcium and magnesium. The diluted version is gentle and effective. Fourth, water only at the root zone, never over the leaves. Once per week, starting when the first flower buds appear and continuing through the full fruiting period. If you want to use a burial method instead, chop fresh peels into small pieces and bury them 5 to 7 centimeters deep alongside the root zone before planting, making sure no fresh peel touches the roots directly. Fifth, stop all nitrogen-forward fertilizers the moment flower buds appear, and switch entirely to the peel tea as your weekly potassium source for the remainder of the season. Gardeners who start this protocol at first bud formation, before the first flowers open, typically begin to see visibly firmer, more numerous fruit setting within 2 to 3 weeks of the first application, because the potassium pathway was already open before the plant needed it most. That 2 to 3 week window is the one that matters most, and what seals it, what genuinely locks the pathway open before the first flower even cracks, is something most gardeners have never seen on a product label. If you were to take banana peel and convert it to biochar through slow, low-heat burning, the potassium concentration climbs from 11.5% all the way to 42.5% by dry weight, making your kitchen waste genuinely competitive with commercial sulfate of potash, which sits at roughly 50%. A product that costs you nothing, made from something you throw away every morning, standing shoulder to shoulder with the most concentrated commercial potassium source on the shelf. Hold that number for a moment, because it changes the way this whole picture looks. The potassium pathway, the timing window, the soil biology. These 3 are not separate tips you apply in sequence. They are one system that runs itself once you understand what connects them. Potassium opens the sugar highway from leaf to fruit, and that pathway has to be wide before the flowers arrive, not after they fall. The soil organisms that break down the peel and release that potassium work faster in biologically active soil, so each week you apply the tea, the soil community grows richer, and the next release comes quicker than the last. The timing, the chemistry, and the biology are pulling in the same direction at the same moment, and when they do, the plant stops cannibalizing its own older leaves and starts sending everything it makes into fruit. Here is the new angle that Writer One's protocol makes possible, and it's the one that matters to your family and your wallet at the same time. When this system runs, specific things vanish permanently from your shopping list. The potassium fertilizer bag disappears, not reduced, gone. The bloom booster with its $25 price tag and its nitrogen and phosphorus filler disappears. What stays in your garden permanently is the understanding of why potassium must lead nitrogen at flowering, and that understanding works every season on every flowering vegetable you grow without further spending. You learned it once. It costs nothing to apply again next year, and the year after that, and the year your daughter borrows your garden bed to try cucumbers for the first time. Knowledge of this kind doesn't expire, it doesn't run out, and nobody can raise the price on it. And this is where J.I. Rodale's story quietly lands. He founded his organic gardening magazine in 1942, and it became the primary popular vehicle that spread banana peel and fruit scrap gardening to American home gardeners across decades. The knowledge has been publicly available for over 80 years. 80 years of magazine issues, 80 years of gardening columns, and most people's kitchens are still throwing away the fix for their pale cucumber vines every single morning. That's not a failure of the information. It's a reminder that what doesn't have a sales force behind it travels slowly, even when it works perfectly. So, here are your two paths, and I want you to name which one you're on. Path A. You continue buying potassium fertilizer at $6 to $10 a bag, applying it 6 to 8 times a season, adding bloom boosters on top because the label promises more fruit, accepting the mild salt accumulation in your soil year after year, getting a yield that's decent, but never as loaded as you know the vines could be, and spending $65 or more on a nutrient that your kitchen produces for free every single day. That path is not a bad faith choice. Most gardeners on it simply never heard the alternative stated plainly. Path B. You soak 3 to 4 banana peels in 1 liter of water for 2 to 3 days. Dilute it 1 part to 4. Water the root zone once a week from first bud through the full fruiting period. Stop the nitrogen-forward fertilizers the moment flower buds appear, and let the soil biology do the releasing for you. For $0, with soil that gets measurably richer each season rather than slowly more salted. Within 2 to 3 weeks of starting, you see firmer fruit, more fruit setting from each flower cluster, and vines that stop yellowing at the bottom because the plant no longer needs to cannibalize itself. Write in the comments, A or B, and tell me why. Not for me, but for yourself. Because when you say it out loud, you hear your own reasoning clearly, and that's worth more than anything I can explain. While you're down there, write how many cucumber plants you're growing this season and what region you're in. I want to know whether this pattern holds the same way in cool northern summers as it does in warm southern ones, and your comment is the data point that answers that question. Close your eyes for just a moment and picture your cucumber bed, the way it looks right now, early in the morning before the sun gets high. The soil is still cool from the night, the vines are reaching, the tendrils curling around whatever they can find, and somewhere at the base of each plant, just below the surface where you can't see it, something is already moving. Microbial activity in the dark, breaking down organic matter at the root edge, making potassium available, one slow molecule at a time. That process is happening whether you helped it or ignored it. The banana peel tea simply tells it, "Go faster. Go now. The flowers are opening." When you toss that peel under your cucumbers instead of into the trash, you do more than just feed a plant. You close a circuit that was always meant to be closed. Kitchen to soil to root to fruit to table. The same loop your grandmother ran without knowing the chemistry behind it, and without spending $1 on it. What returns to the plant when that circuit closes is its natural capacity to set fruit at the rate it was always designed for. Not the depleted, salt-burdened, nitrogen-chasing performance of a vine fighting against its own soil, but the full expression of what a cucumber plant does when the conditions are simply right. The power is not in the bag on the shelf. The power is in understanding what the plant was asking for all along, and recognizing that the answer was already in your hand every morning before you threw it away. Come back next week. There's another crop in your garden running the same quiet shortage, and the fix is just as close. Go deep. Everything is down there.